Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub, a somewhat improvised approach to mental health. My name is Glenn Sahlers. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Imagine, if you will, driving out of downtown Toronto after a dinner with friends. Friends are sitting in the back seat as you're driving along the Gardiner Expressway, a major highway out of Toronto, heading home to Brampton, Ontario, which is just west of Toronto. And in the darkness on the road, you all of a sudden get a punch in the face. You turn to your spouse and ask, "What's up? What's going on?" And they begin to accuse you of looking at another woman in a restaurant, and how dare you do that. This happened to me with my ex-wife. I was a victim of abuse, verbal and physical abuse, and there's nothing I can do about it, but what I can do is I can learn from it. And then the reason I share this story is not to belittle somebody. It's to let you know that I had no idea this happened until a friend of mine a couple of years ago said, "Glenn, do you remember that time when we were sitting in the back of your car and we were supposed to come over to your house the next day, but we went out for dinner. Your ex-wife accused you of something and punched you in the face while you were driving?" I had no recollection. Now I'm starting to remember this stuff. The point is, we block out certain memories in our life, and these memories could be traumatic, as this was. I have a history of trauma for being blamed for things, being bullied, not being liked, and this trauma has had an impact on my life and my conscious behaviors out there. If you haven't listened to the Andrew Huberman podcast, it's called the Huberman Lab. Tune in. He is an incredible podcast host. He has a science-based approach to health, and there's been 3 episodes I've listened to, and it's a 3-part series with Dr. Paul Conti. Dr. Paul Conti has written a book, which I purchased, and I'm reading that right now. And he's also a guest on the Huberman Lab, and he talks about mental health. And I wanted to share with you a bit about what he talks about, and it makes a lot of sense. It also aligns with much of the knowledge that I have around who we are and what we do and why we do what we do. But he explains it really well. And I'm going to walk you through a bit of this. I'm going to try to relate it to my own life. He states that there's different pillars of mental health, essentially. And ultimately, what we're all trying to get to is what's called a sense of agency and gratitude. To me, what that means is that I am empowered to make decisions that I feel are right for me and others, versus what I used to do, and that was make decisions that were right for my ex-wife. That's what I did. I've done that in many times in my life where I didn't feel like I had agency to have control over my life. And maybe you feel that way in certain parts of your life. It could be, I feel that way with my work because the team I'm in, my boss doesn't seem to listen to me, so I feel like I have no agency. Maybe it's in your marriage. Maybe it's with certain family members. So a sense of agency is that I have a choice. I can go after what I want and make sure it works, at least for me. Of course, that doesn't mean we have to not compromise things. That's not it at all. However, that's number 1. Peace, contentment mean I have some agency in my life. I have some freedom of expression. The other one he talks about is gratitude, and coming from a place of gratitude, grateful for things in your life, and that you're not living a negative life. We've all heard of this attitude of gratitude, and I love it because sometimes when I'm focused on the negative, I have to catch myself and think, well, what am I grateful for? What am I happy about? Like, here's an example. I was doing a workshop last week. I'm in a hotel. I have my computer set up in the conference room that I'm at, and there's a number of us doing presentations there. And then we have to go to another room to watch a keynote speaker. I set up my laptop. I said to the gentleman there who ran the electronics and ran the rooms, I said, I'm worried that somebody's going to steal my laptop. And he said, don't worry, we've never had a theft here. I've been here for a year. And what I'll do as well is I'll lock the doors. Just keep your door closed. I'll lock it. And before you come back up, I'll unlock the doors. I get back up to do my presentation. I walk in the room. The people in my room come in as well. So the tables are full. My computer is gone. I was shocked. Now, I used my agency here. I said I can be really angry and upset, which I was. Okay, and I acknowledge that because that's important as well. If you're angry and upset, don't suppress it. Just say, I'm angry and upset. That's okay. Who wouldn't be? I felt anxious. I then told my colleague, this is what happened, and he was doing a presentation as well, and he said, I have an extra computer. I said, okay, let's contact the office. I'll have the file that I was going to do sent to you. We'll upload it to your computer. And I opened up the laptop, plugged it in. The presentation was there. And I said, folks, I just had my laptop stolen. Give me a moment, please. And then I started talking, and I could feel the nervousness in my voice. And then I thought, what? I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful that I have a laptop to work on. I will move forward. That was using agency and gratitude. I could have been very angry. It could have ruined my entire day. And I'm still working through the challenges around this. But I had to focus on what I can do, not what I can't do. And what I can do is I can embrace the people in the room. I can embrace myself. I can calm myself down, and I have agency. The old me would not have done that. I would have been very, very nervous. I would have been upset. I would have been really shaken up. I'd have done it, but it wouldn't have gone well. So this agency and gratitude, how does one get there? Because there's many people out there that may say, I have an inferiority complex. I have no confidence. They're doing this to me. This is not working. Whatever it might be, there's all these different things that happen. And clearly, that's a sign of I have no agency or a sense of gratitude. I'm focused on those things that are not working. Now, it's important to know what's not working and what is working. And a great way of doing that is to ask people, what are their thoughts? Because a lot of things that we do, we don't know that we do it. And they may have a negative consequence on other people. However, I'm not going there right now. Now, where I'm going is that was the main thing. We're after gratitude and we're after agency. Now, what creates that is the empowerment, that I'm empowered to make a decision, and a certain level of humility. Below that is what's called the structure of self and the function of self. So I'm going to explain a bit more about this. According to Paul Conti, we have a structure of self and a function of self. The function of self and the structure of self lead to our empowerment, humility, which leads to agency and gratitude, which leads to peace, contentment, and delight. The key part of this model is to really understand that much of us, who we are, is unconscious to us. We don't know what's below the surface. And the way he describes it on the podcast is many people don't focus on mental health. They're like, you know what? Just get over it. Whatever's going on, just get over it. The challenge is we don't always know what's going on inside. And he explains it like if something's wrong with you physically, you're going to go to the doctor. They're going to do some tests. They're going to do some diagnosis. They're going to find out what's going on, but you don't know what's going on inside. And the same thing with our unconscious self. We don't always know what's driving the bus within. And it's important to understand, well, what is that? What am I unconscious to that's driving my bus? So this whole thing with my ex-wife, I blocked out a lot of stuff. I blocked out stuff in my childhood. But once I can become aware of that, then I have more agency. then I have more choice. So becoming conscious of the unconscious helps us get over whatever is going on. So the first part of the model is the structure of self. And the unconscious mind is the starting point. And the unconscious mind is automatic reaction. So if you think about our limbic system is our emotional response, and many of our decisions are made based on emotion, how I feel about the situation. And that leads to an emotional reaction. We also use logic in making decisions. So there's a balance of emotion and logic in making decisions. The emotional limbic system is very powerful. It can override everything. That's why when you're driving a vehicle and you see a red light in front of you on the car, you automatically stop so you don't hit the vehicle. You don't even have to think about it. It's a decision that's automatic. We've learned to do that. Same thing when it comes to different circumstances in our life. We've learned to behave a certain way, but we're not necessarily conscious of why we do what we do. So if I think about the fact that I was how would I describe it? Not a pushover. Well, I talked about this in a previous episode, a coward. I didn't stand up for myself because I have this unconscious need to be liked. I never thought of it that way, but throughout my life, I felt I wasn't liked. My father apparently didn't like me. He preferred my brother. This is traumatic for a child because if your father is disregarding you, what are you going to think as a child? I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And then that establishes a pattern. And then when one starts feeling unworthy, you put yourself in situations that remind you of that align to that. That there you go, you're letting me know I'm unworthy, and I'm used to that. I'm used to being unworthy. And then in high school, I was bullied, and then I married a bully, and then I had bully friends. And it just keeps on going until we become conscious of this, and then we can say, well, no, that's it. I'm done with this. But many of us are not willing to look at the unconscious for many reasons, because you never know what you're going to uncover there. However, when we can look at the unconscious mind and understand what drives us, maybe it's our genes, maybe it's generational trauma. And when I think about generational trauma, if I look at my parents and their parents, they grew up in World War I, World War II. They must have lived in a state of fear. And the world is against you. How would one feel if you know the world's against you? That they're fighting you, that people are attacking you, especially as a child, being bombed in villages. What is going through your mind? It must be an inferiority complex. It must be really scary. And my parents went through that, and they had certain behaviors because of that. And then my parents had certain behaviors. So I think my family has a history of feeling rejected and having to try hard to look perfect and be liked. We want everybody to be happy. And that's part of the unconscious self, is what is in your history? What are some things that maybe you don't talk about, that we don't own up to, that we don't question? So in these situations, like at parties, I feel disconnected. And to think about, well, what's going on inside of me at that time? What's happening there? And getting curious with yourself really helps us uncover a bit of the unconscious mind, because once we can be aware of our unconscious mind, then we become more conscious of it. Now I have some choice. Now I have some agency. But above the conscious mind are also defense mechanisms. I thought this part was brilliant when he started talking about defense mechanisms, because defense mechanisms are those things that protect us. Maybe it's a certain anxiety. And we have anxieties for a reason. We have anxieties to protect us. And we have fear. We have being vigilant. We have, I'm going to show you how smart I am. We have, I better make sure everybody's happy. These are defense mechanisms that are built on top of our unconscious mind that we start using to protect ourselves. We've learned, I better be perfect. That's my defense. If I am perfect, people will like me. If I try hard and recognize you, people will like me. If I make you happy, you will like me. This is a defense mechanism. It has pros and cons. And the defense mechanism leads into our character structure, who we are, how we feel about ourselves. The character structure impacts our decisions. What do we do? That equates to the self. So that's the structure of self. Now he goes to the other end, which is called the function of self, which lines up to the structure of self, which is our self-awareness. That's part of our structure, our function rather. We have our defense mechanisms, but the functional side of it, not the structural side, the functional side is actually what do I do when I defend myself? So I might yell at you. I might say, I'll show you, and tell you exactly the way it is. I might get defensive and say, how dare you do that? So that's my defense mechanism in action. We have certain behaviors, and to be aware of those behaviors based on all that. This is what I want to talk about in the next couple of episodes of the Brain Scrub is what does this all mean for me? And I'm going to share a bit about my story through this. Part of the structure in self and function of self create our belief system. What I feel about myself, what I believe about myself, what I believe about others, my perception of others, because my self-belief will impact how I view other people. Beliefs drive our behaviors. Beliefs are very difficult to change. Very difficult. It takes time. That's one reason I went through the Clear Beliefs coaching program. I'm a certified coach in clearing beliefs, is because beliefs drive a lot of this stuff that we have. If I feel I'm not good enough, which I feel at times, I do certain behaviors to reinforce that. If I feel I'm not worthy or I'm not likable, if that's my belief, then I'm going to do behaviors that are correlate. I'm going to bring myself into situations that will reinforce what I know about myself and what I believe about myself. I want you to think about, where do you get anxious? When do you get anxious? With whom do you get anxious? When do you notice that you're not being your authentic self? What is going on when that happens? Because that's number one, is to understand what's not working for me. And sure, there's many things that are working for us, and I'm not trying to discount that at all. But if we want to improve ourselves and have more agency and gratitude in our life so we can have peace, contentment, and delight, we need to really consider, what are those times where I don't feel peaceful, where I don't feel content, and to list those out. And then once we know that, we can then start having a conversation about why. For me, the focus of this will be on the need for me to be liked. Where does that come from? And I will dive into that a bit deeper. And what I'm hoping for as I do this is that you reflect on yours and apply your own situation based on my story. So I'll give you kind of like the steps and how to analyze it, and then what one can do. Because now in workshops, I am much more authentic. I lead with my heart, but it took some work to get there. It didn't happen overnight. I had to shift many beliefs to get to where I'm at right now. And I want the same thing for people in this world. It is hard for me to be around people who have no agency or gratitude. And there's times I do that. And I'm catching myself more and more now when I don't have any gratitude, when I focus on those things that are not working. Because I can't do anything about the current situation, but what I can do is I can focus on, what do I want to do differently in the future? Be more future-oriented versus living in the past. However, if I don't understand what's going on, if I don't know what's in my unconscious self, if I don't get curious about the past, then I'm not going to really understand, why is the emotional reaction the way it is? Why is my limbic system always creating this response and this reaction when I'm in this situation? Like, why is it when I go to these network events that I feel this way all the time? I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I do. I feel tense. I feel nervous. What's that all about? This is something I'm still trying to discover. So through this journey, I hope to have an aha moment. I hope you have an aha moment. And I look forward to chatting in the next episode. Thanks for listening.